Here is the recap of the first season of Severance. Somewhere in America, there is a large corporation called Lumon, and in the depths of its office there is a very specific floor. People working on this floor voluntarily agreed to a certain operation called Severance. They have a special chip implanted in their brains, and now when they go down to this floor, their consciousness is switched. Roughly speaking, down there they don't remember anything from the outside world. Who they are, why they got here, and even what is happening in the outside world is not known to them. Also, when they come up from this floor, they completely forget what they were doing at work. To make it easier for you to understand, when you go downstairs, it is as if people's consciousness is replaced by a completely different personality that doesn't remember anything at all. In addition, I will call the personality on the outside outie and the personality on the inside innie to make it clearer to you who we are talking about. And logically, when you see that the action takes place in a white room, the actors are innie, and when the action takes place in the outside world, they are outie. I also want to clarify an important detail that when an innie gets into the elevator after work, the next moment he gets out of it the next day, because he doesn't remember anything beyond this floor. Roughly speaking, he has been doing nothing but working his entire conscious life after waking up. The main character's name is Mark. After the death of his wife, he was completely lost and decided to undergo a severance procedure, because he wanted not to think about her at least for a while. And Mark works there for a while. Having come down to the severance floor, he goes through the maze of identical corridors to his department, where 3 other people usually work together with him. However, Mr. Milchick, their supervisor, calls Mark with him to see his boss. There, Miss Selvig informs him that the former head of their department, Petey, has retired, and his position is now going to Mark. He is also instructed to go to the negotiation room, where he has to instruct the newcomer, who has come down to this floor for the first time. A woman named Helly wakes up in a locked room, not understanding who she is or how she got here. Mark tries to calm her down and explain what's going on, but she panics and demands to be let out. Eventually, Mark gives in and, using the instructions, which by the way are for absolutely everything on this floor, leads Helly to the emergency exit, explaining to her that all the employees have been through this. The woman goes out the door, but immediately comes back in. This is repeated several times, and Mark tells Helly that her outie is coming back in because she intends to work here and doesn't want to quit. Milchick then shows her a tape of her outie, telling her that she voluntarily did this to herself. A frustrated Helly goes with Mark to their department, where he introduces the woman to her new co-workers, Dylan and an elderly Irving. He also shows her exactly what to do on the job, and it's even weirder stuff. You have to look for numbers on the screen that, for some unknown reason, evoke certain feelings in the observer, such as fear, joy, sadness, etc. Then put these numbers in a certain folder. Dylan informs Helly that if she follows the plan, she'll get various little entertainments, and the best worker will go to a waffle party at the end of the quarter. Let me remind you that the innie are always working, and they don't get paid a salary, and they can't spend it here anyway, so the only joy is from such small bonuses. Mark gets off work and goes to visit his pregnant sister Devon and her writer husband Rickon. There he notices a man watching him from the woods, and a short time later, he meets him at a diner. The man tells Mark that his name is Petey and informs him that they were best friends at work. Mark doesn't believe him, as they can't remember anything about work because of the severance. However, the man says that there is a way to reverse the severance and that the Lumon Corporation is now after him. A stunned Mark returns home where we see his neighbor, who turns out to be his boss, Miss Selvig. He doesn't know about her, of course, as he has no memory of the job. We later learn that Miss Selvig is undivided because of her status, and also undivided are Supervisor Milchick and the head of security. The next day, Mark's sister introduces him to her friend Alexa, and on a date with her, he meets the protesters. It turns out that many citizens are not happy with the practice of severance and find it inhumane. After a while, he even sleeps with Alexa, but spoils everything, and they break up. Soon, Mark meets Petey again and learns that due to the reverse surgery, Petey is not well and sometimes does not realize where exactly he is now at work or in the outside world. Mark offers him a place to stay, but the next day he disappears, and Mark finds him at a gas station dying of a seizure. Soon he finds Petey's cell phone at his house, which is constantly being called by an unknown number, but Mark doesn't pick it up. After a while, he goes to Petey's funeral for some reason, where he meets his wife and daughter. Also attending this funeral is Miss Selvig, who knows that Petey has restored the separation and suspects that Mark is aware of this. She also discreetly removes the severance chip from Petey's head. At work, Helly still can't accept her fate, and having written a message to her Audi, tries to get out of the floor. But it turns out that Lumon has a special device that doesn't allow any information to be entered or taken out on any kind of data storage. Mark stands up for Helly, for which the head of the security service takes him to the so-called break room, where in fact he is guilty of something, roughly speaking morally tortured, forcing in the end to sincerely admit his guilt. Helly is not deterred and makes a formal request to be fired, but her Audi rejects the request. The entire department of characters are sent to the Perpetuity Wing. It's something like a museum, where there are wax figures of previous directors of the Lumon Corporation with their sayings and wisdom. By the way, all the directors have the last name Egan. We learn that the company has been around for over 100 years. The main characters also enter the hall where the house of the first director and founder of the company, Keir Egan, is recreated. After the tour, Helly tries to escape again, and she is sent to the same break room, where she is morally tortured for several days. After leaving the break room, Helly still continues to rebel after a while. She threatens to hurt herself. Then the next day, she is shown a message from her Audi. The Audi says that the innie is obliged to work because the Audi has decided so, and that the innie has no right to vote at all, because the innie is a nobody and will be regretted if she doesn't obey. Realizing that she has no other choice, she decides to end her life, but Mark and the head of security save her. After that, Helly is under constant surveillance. Mark's sister's husband, named Rickon, leaves him his new personal growth book, but the paranoid Miss Selvig picks it up and brings it to the office. She tries to find some hidden message in it, but soon forgets it in the conference room. Walking through the corridors, Irving meets Bert, the head of the Optics and Design Division, and a spark develops between them. Irving visits him in his department, and when he returns, he finds the very same book by Rickon, which soon Mark and Dylan start reading secretly, and their inner selves begin to rebel against the system. In the outside world, Mark goes to see Devon, his sister who is about to give birth. She goes to give birth at a special country club that specializes in this. There she meets the pregnant wife of a senator, who is acting strangely. We later learn that the woman has resorted to severance surgery so that her innie will give birth and the Audi won't feel all that pain. For the record, the public has never heard of Severance outside of the Lumon Corporation. Soon Devon decides to hire a babysitter, and she turns out to be Miss Selvig, who thus spies on the unsuspecting Mark. The bosses notice that Irving and Bert spend a lot of time together, and that their departments are beginning to communicate, so they secretly set them against each other. However, they do not succeed, and the main characters get acquainted with the Optics and Design Division, which turns out to be quite a lot of people. There, Dylan stealthily steals some strange laminated card and hides it behind the toilet. Also, Helly and Mark accidentally stumble upon a department where goats are raised. Plus, Mark is once again sent to the break room for disobedience. Suddenly, Innie Dillons awakens at the home of his Audi, where their supervisor, Milchick, demands to know where he hid the very card. Dylan is shocked and doesn't understand how he switched without being in the office, to which Milchick replies to him that there is a so-called overtime feature. Dylan tells him where he hid the card, but at that moment, Dylan's son runs into the storeroom and hugs his father, after which the overtime is switched off. When he comes to his senses at work, he asks the supervisor about his son, but he refuses to give any more information about the outside world. Dylan then reports the incident to his co-workers, who are determined to rebel. In the outside world, Mark does decide to answer the constant calls from an unknown number to Petey's phone. A certain woman arranges a meeting with him, and there he learns that she is a former Lumon surgeon who had been involved in severance operations and had figured out a way to reverse the process. Suddenly, They are found by the very same Lumon security officer, but the woman kills him and orders Mark to leave. But, before she does, she gives him a security guard key card that can open any door in the office. The woman says to take it with him to work and tells him that his innie will figure out what to do with it. The bosses are unhappy that the main characters are hanging around the Severance floor. The management is putting doors in their department that they can't just open. Mark finds the very same key card in his pocket and informs his friends about it. They decide to sneak into the security office and find out more about how overtime works, as they intend to wake up in the outside world and tell the public what is going on here. Mark and Helly sneak into the security office, and it turns out there is no one there. They get the instructions on how to turn on overtime and go back to the department. Meanwhile, Irving, who has feelings for Bert, goes to see him in the department but discovers that he's retiring and it's his last day on the job. I want to make it clear that for the intro, this is equivalent to death, as he will never wake up at work again and his consciousness will simply disappear. Miss Selvig notices that Mark is acting strange and sends him to a special procedure where a woman named Casey, who is also severanced, tells Mark the attributes of her outie. In theory, this is supposed to put people at ease somehow. Afterwards, Miss Selvig orders Casey to be sent to some sort of testing floor, and we never hear from her again. Soon we are shown a picture of Mark's dead wife, and we see Casey on it, which means that his wife is not dead after all. The main character's department fulfills the quarterly goal, and Miss Selvig suggests Mark to choose one employee to go to the so-called waffle party. He chooses Dylan, and in the meantime, the main characters are working out an escape plan. According to the plan, after everyone leaves work, Dylan stays for the waffle party, escapes from it, and infiltrates the security office, where he turns on the rest of the co-workers overtime. Those waking up in the outside world will have to get their bearings and find someone they can trust, then tell them what kind of torment they're enduring on the Severance floor at Lumon. The main characters spring into action. The waffle party turns out to be a rather strange action. Dylan goes to the Perpetuity Wing, the very museum where a replica of the company founder's house stands, lies down on the bed, and half-naked people in strange masks start dancing in front of him. Dylan escapes the party, infiltrates the security office, and turns on overtime for his co-workers. Meanwhile, Miss Selvig reports to her superiors and is fired from her job because of what happened earlier. She tells them that Petey somehow reversed the severance, but they don't believe her. Selvig then goes to Mark's sister's house, where her husband Rickon is throwing a party to celebrate the release of his book. Irving wakes up at his Odie's house and finds himself drawing the same pictures of a dark corridor over the years. For the record, the same corridor led to an elevator to the mysterious testing floor. After searching the house, Irving discovers that his outie was also trying to figure out what exactly they were doing at work. The man decides to look for Bert, he somehow finds his address, and somehow by car gets to his house. However, in the window, he notices that he is happily living with his husband, but still comes knocking on the door. Mark awakens at Rickon's party for his book and discovers Miss Selvig in front of him, but doesn't give a look. However, the woman soon realizes that someone has turned on overtime and rushes to Lumon's office, even though she has been fired. A dazed Mark tries to find someone in the crowd of people he can trust and eventually recognizes Rickon, whose book he's already learned by heart and who has changed his life. Mark learns that he has a sister and tells her about everything that is going on at Lumon and that their babysitter is his boss. He learns from his sister that his outie was married, but his wife died in a car accident. Mark finds a picture of himself with his wife and recognizes her as the same woman Casey from work. He runs to his sister and yells that she's alive, then overtime is cut off as that's when Milchick breaks into the security office and knocks Dylan to the ground. Let's go back a little bit. Helly comes to her senses at what appears to be a lavish Lumon event. She learns that she is the daughter of James Egan, the current CEO of the Lumon Corporation, and she will someday take his place in the company. She also learns that the event is in her honor, where she is scheduled to perform soon. It turns out that Lumon wants to legalize severance not only at her job, but to make it a widespread practice. According to the management, all people should become the children of Keir Egan, whatever that means. Just before the performance, Miss Selvig stops Helly and tells her not to do anything stupid. However, Helly goes on stage and tells the audience that the people on the Severance floor are unhappy and will be tortured there if they disobey, after which Helly is cut off. This is the end of the first season. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.